Chapter 1. Why has the Su-34 become a defense asset that needs absolute protection? In the modern military world, each weapon is not simply a tool of destruction, but also a mirror reflecting the scientific, economic, and political will of a country. Russia, in the context of prolonged and increasingly complicated conflicts, has been forced to take strategic steps to protect its military assets. In particular, strengthening the protection of Su-34 bombers at air bases has become a hotspot on the global defense chessboard. Many people will wonder, why does Russia focus so much on protecting the Su-34, while the country has a variety of other modern weapons such as the Su-35, Su-57, or the S-400, S-500 air defense systems? The answer lies in the special strategic position of the Su-34 in the entire Russian Air Force strategy. First of all, the Su-34 is a tactical bomber, known as the medium-range Iron Fist of the Russian Air Force. It not only plays a ground attack role, but is also capable of intercepting and destroying airborne targets in certain situations. In other words, the Su-34 is both a fist and a shield. When looking at the defense map of Eastern Europe and the Black Sea, we will see that Russia's Su-34 bases are often located in extremely sensitive locations, where just a small gap will shake the entire defense line. Therefore, the Su-34 is not simply a fighter, but also a defensive pillar in vulnerable areas. If we imagine on a chessboard, the Su-34 is like a rook, not a king, not a queen, but if lost, the entire battle will reveal a deadly gap. The rook can sweep vertically, horizontally, open a path, and hold a line, and the Su-34 is the same. It sweeps bombs along the front line, sweeps missiles across the ground, creating a safe corridor for infantry and tanks to advance. Therefore, any country confronting Russia understands that taking down the Su-34 is the fastest way to weaken Moscow's offensive and defensive power. In recent attacks, many Russian air bases have become the favorite targets of enemy drones. These small, cheap UAVs, but capable of carrying explosives, flying low, sneaking through radar layers, have repeatedly caused losses for Russia. There was even a case where a small UAV traveled hundreds of kilometers to attack directly into the base containing the Su-34, causing significant damage. This is no different than a thief using simple pliers to open a billion-dollar safe in a bank, both humiliating and dangerous. It is this danger that has forced Russia to change its approach. Unable to rely solely on long-range radars or air defense missile systems, Moscow needs a direct layer of protection right at the base to minimize the risk of the Su-34 becoming a delicious prey for surprise attacks. If in the past the Russian airbase was confident as a steel fortress, now they are forced to turn the fortress into an even more solid super bunker with a multi-layered defense network from the ground to the low sky. What is special is that Russia not only reinforces physically, such as building concrete roofs or aircraft hangars, but also combines modern technologies, from laser systems to blind UAVs to electronic warfare networks to disorient UAVs. Figuratively speaking, the Su-34 is now like a famous star protected by a team of bodyguards, from tall men in black suits standing at the gate to surveillance cameras and even sniffer dogs. And the reason is obvious. A star like the Su-34 cannot be photographed by UAV paparazzi exploding and spreading around the world. Putting the Su-34 in the broader defense map, we will see that its importance does not stop at the Russian border. With a flight range of more than 4,000 kilometers and the ability to carry a variety of weapons from precision-guided bombs to anti-ship missiles, the Su-34 is the tool that helps Russia expand its influence far and wide. It can reach the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and even the Middle East from its base in southern Russia. This makes protecting the US-34 not just a passive defense, but also a way to keep Russia's long arm from being cut off. However, it must be made clear that no system is perfect. Even though Russia has increased its protection, the risk of the Su-34 being damaged still exists, because modern warfare is like a high-tech cat-and-mouse game. Today, the cat can catch the mouse with a laser, but tomorrow, the mouse will invent an anti-laser cloak. Therefore, what Russia is doing is not to create invulnerability, but to extend the safety period, minimize losses, and send a political message that the Su-34 is invulnerable. From a strategic perspective, this move also has great psychological significance. The military needs not only weapons, but also confidence. A pilot stepping on the Su-34 will certainly feel more secure knowing that his aircraft is protected by multiple layers of shields. And conversely, the enemy will have to consider carefully before recklessly launching a suicide UAV, because the possibility of the attack has been significantly reduced. That is the dual effect, both protecting the substance and building trust. In a humorous aspect, the Su-34 base can now be imagined as a fenced village where any sparrow flying by is suspected to be a disguised UAV. The guards on duty must have been used to suddenly seeing a strange object flying by and then raising their guns to shoot like in a chicken shooting game. But behind those seemingly humorous situations is a very serious reality. Any small mistake can cause tens of millions of dollars to burn in seconds. Therefore, Russia's public increase in protection of the Su-34 is not only to keep the property, but also a show of strength. The world sees that Russia clearly understands its weaknesses, dares to admit it, and quickly acts to overcome them. It was a message not only to the West, but also to the Russian people themselves. We will not let our national assets become easy targets. So, it can be said that Chapter 1 of this story is not just about an aircraft, but about how a country responds to new challenges. The Su-34 has become the center of a modern confrontation where cheap UAVs challenge expensive hardware, where protection technology is forced to evolve every day, and where every strategic decision can shape the outcome of war. And certainly, when looking at the Russian defense map today, the red circles around the Su-34 base will be more prominent than ever, as an affirmation that this is an inviolable point.
Chapter 2: The Battle of Wits on the Defense Map and the Problem of Protecting the Su-34. If Chapter 1 has shown the overall picture of the sensitivity in protecting the Su-34, then in Chapter 2, we will go straight to the core. How Russia is applying the defense map and multi-layered defense strategy to turn air bases into impregnable fortresses. It sounds simple, but in fact, behind it is a persistent battle of wits between technology, intelligence, and the inherent tenacity in Russian military culture. First of all, imagine the Russian defense map as a giant chessboard. On that chessboard, air bases like the one where the Su-34 is stationed are not just mindless red dots, but vital strategic nodes connected to the Sky-Earth defense system. Russian military planners look at the map not only with the eyes of a general, but also with the alertness of a veteran chess player. They calculate which positions are most vulnerable to attack, which directions require radar, which directions require air defense nets, and even make hypothetical calculations. What if a small UAV enters? If a long-range missile flies low hugging the terrain, which rapid reaction force will handle it? People often compare protecting the Su-34 base like protecting a treasure. Each Su-34 is not only a fighter jet but also a national asset, a tool to demonstrate power. A Su-34 destroyed on the airport is no different from a direct punch to Russia's prestige. Therefore, Russia has had to build a layer of protection. On the outermost is the surveillance radar system, whose task is to detect any suspicious movements. Inside are short, medium, and long-range air defense systems such as S-400 and Pantsir S-1. Deeper right inside the base are layers of anti-UAV and anti-commando barriers, and there are even measures that sound strange, training falcons to hunt small UAVs. It sounds like a joke, but in some documents, the Russian Air Force itself has studied this model because commercial UAVs are as small as pigeons and difficult to detect by radar, so the natural solution has proven effective. The Russian defense map also shows something interesting. Bases with Su-34s are often located in areas that are far enough from the front line to avoid direct attack, but close enough for the aircraft to quickly deploy their missions. This is a very difficult tightrope walking, because the closer to the front line, the greater the risk. But if it is too far, the effectiveness is reduced. Therefore, choosing the location of the Su-34 base is an art in itself. And once the location has been chosen, the remaining problem is how to turn the base into an impregnable point on the defense map. To make it easier to visualize, let's take a close example. Suppose you have a house full of gold and silver jewelry. You will not only lock the door but also install cameras, raise dogs, build electric fences. You even ask your neighbors to keep an eye on it. For Russia, the Su-34 is like that treasure. The base where they are parked not only has a lock, that is radar system and air defense, but also has layers of defense. Each layer of defense is designed so that if the enemy gets through the outer layer, the inner layer will immediately react. This is one of the famous defense philosophies: no loophole should be exploited by the enemy. However, the battle of wits does not stop at defense. Russia also has to constantly try and fail. The reality of the Ukrainian battlefield shows that many bases have been attacked by UAVs despite having radar. So where is the fault? It could be in the radar blind spot, it could be in the reaction speed of the air defense, or simply because the enemy is too cunning when launching UAVs from unexpected directions. It is from these painful lessons that Russia has tightened the protection of the Su-34. And we cannot ignore the psychological factor. Once the Su-34 pilots know that their aircraft is absolutely protected, they will be more confident in their mission. On the contrary, if news of the base being attacked leaks out, the fighting mentality will be shaken. That is why Russia not only strengthens physical defense, but also builds a propaganda system to reassure soldiers. Once again, we see that the defense map is not just red dots and lines, but is an interweaving of strategy, psychology, and even political messages. Chapter 3: Meaning, Consequences, and Global Message. If Chapter 1 has analyzed in depth the technical aspects and defense maps, Chapter 3 will go into the part that many history and war viewers are most interested in. After all, what does Russia's increased protection of the Su-34 mean for the global power game? First, it affirms that in the era of modern warfare, no asset is immune to the risk of attack. The Su-34 is a source of pride, but it still has to hide under a dense defense net. This shows the vulnerability of even the leading military powers. Any country, no matter how rich and powerful, must face the problem of protecting its equipment. This is a profound message for countries seeking air force development. Investing in modern aircraft is not enough, but investing in protection systems is also necessary. Second, Russia is highlighting its Su-34 protection strategy also has a deterrent effect. The message sent abroad is very clear. Don't even think about attacking because we are fully prepared. This is not only about protecting aircraft, but also Russia's way of proving that it is the master of the game. In a tense international environment, demonstrating the ability to protect a base is a form of psychological warfare, making the opponent wary right from the start. Third, the consequences of the decision to strengthen the protection of Su-34 also affects the regional balance of power. When the Su-34 is safer, it will take off more often and more effectively. This directly affects the deterrence capability on all fronts, especially in conflict zones. Once again, we see clearly protecting a base is not only about defense but also the foundation for maintaining an attack. Finally, from a history and war perspective, the story of protecting the Su-34 is a vivid example of the changing nature of war in the 21st century. In the past, air bases were only concerned about being bombed. Now the threat comes from cheap UAVs and non-traditional weapons, and to deal with it, military powers are forced to use radar systems, air defense missiles, and even birds of prey. A change that is both humorous and serious, reflecting the asymmetric nature of modern warfare. In short, when Russia strengthens the protection of Su-34 at the base, it is not just a military measure, but a comprehensive message. To the enemy, it is a warning. To allies, it is a reassurance, and to the Russian people, it is a commitment to national defense. Conclusion. From Chapter 1 to Chapter 3, we have gone through the whole story. From why Russia has to strengthen the protection of Su-34, to how Russia deploys the defense system on the defense map, and finally the meaning of this move for the world. This is a typical example of the fierceness, surprise, but also full of humor in modern warfare. If you find this analysis helps you understand more about history, defense, and war, please like, share, and subscribe to History and War channel to explore more interesting stories with me.